Thanks ever so much for extending this invitation, and it's always a pleasure to present something which I've been engaged with. The story, it will unfold in the talk. Started serendipitously about 5 years ago at a conference, and then led on to these wonderful things which were being found. And I thought it is important that it is brought to an Indian audience very much, and it's absolutely important for us. And it fits in so well with what is going on at the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya at the moment with regard to the ancient sculptures project that they are hosting here. Whenever talks of maritime connectivity and the trade links between Indian subcontinent and the Eastern Mediterranean are talked about, they are mostly illustrated by these three lovely objects. And quite recently, about 2 years ago now, there was a major seminar held at the Center for the Center for Study of Ancient Societies at City University of New York. And it was called The Objects That Travel. And these are obviously the objects that had traveled. The famous ivory figurine that was found in Pompeii of quite certainly of a manufacturer from around central Maharashtra, Bhokardan region, and which is on the left side, and the right side is the bronze Poseidon, which is in the regional museum at Kolhapur and found in Brahmapuri Hoard. And in between, of course, there is this lovely bronze Shailendra or Yakshi figurine that was found in Khorrori in Oman, which is now in the Smithsonian. So these are the objects which epitomize the connectivities between these two geographic regions. From a space and time viewpoint, you can see that these were the maritime trade routes that were frequented by sailors right from the ancient times. And of course, the main driving force for these maritime interactions was the so-called discovery of monsoon winds that sort of happened in the 1st century AD. And if you focus on to the Western Indian Ocean or Arabian Sea region, you will find that there are two ways through which the Indian subcontinent could be connected to the Eastern Mediterranean. And one way is that travels sort of south of the Arabian Peninsula through the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb into the Red Sea and up from Egypt towards Alexandria and then onwards to the Eastern Mediterranean. And the second route is, of course, as you can see, is through the Persian Gulf. So it goes to the north of the Arabian Peninsula and goes down to the delta of Mesopotamian rivers like Euphrates and Tigris, goes up the rivers and then overland and reaches the Eastern Mediterranean somewhere in the present regions of Syria or Lebanon or somewhere like that. And this world has been, particularly after the advent of monsoons, has been traversed quite a lot by Mediterranean sailors. And by far the most significant text that talks about these interactions is a manual of seafaring called The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, which I regard as some sort of a Lonely Planet guide to the ancient world. And, it's like, if you want to go to India from Egypt, what do? Where do you go? You go here, don't go there. Carry this, but don't carry that. If you go here, there is danger. If you go there, there are goods to be exchanged, etc., etc. So it gives you a whole set of information about what to do and when, what to do. And this is a famous map of the world that this text of 1st century AD epitomizes. And as you can see, there are plenty of details that are available in this text about ports, routes, people, areas, and commodities. So it's a compendium of information about all these things. And you can see that in the map that the blue dots are ports, and you can see how many of them are there on the um, um, on the western coast of India. Some of these have been identified. Some of them have been very well known. So, for example, Kalyan, which is right to the north of where we are at the moment, is mentioned in there. Sopara is mentioned in there. So many of these major ports are mentioned. But our gaze for today's talk is going to be on the western side of this, not so much on the Indian subcontinent, but on the western side. And the route that was coming from the south of the Arabian Peninsula, going up from the Red Sea region, ended at a few places which are presently in Egypt. And at those places, those were the landing points for this maritime trade that was coming in. From those places, they went to a city called Coptos, which was located on the Nile. And the trade was then loaded onto riverboats in Nile and then carried upwards to Alexandria. From Alexandria, it was then carried upwards further north and across the Mediterranean, all the way to Rome and to other, consumption sites and cities that were in what is presently Europe. So one of these important sites was this port city called Berenike, and this is where roughly the location of this place is. It's about 1,000 kilometers to the south of Cairo, and currently it is fairly inaccessible because it is also a place where a major army base is located. And maybe because of the presence of army base, etc., it has kind of, been shielded from preying, activities of other people because it's already sort of been sequestered. I had my permits to go there this year, but unfortunately, this India trip has been so busy that I couldn't make it to Berenike. Maybe next year, God willing, I'll be able to get there. But as you can see, that it's a major site. There is a harbor. It's a kind of a kind of inlet that comes in. There is a cape in the harbor, and there are site. Of course, the site sort of spreads around. And the site is very much in habitation from 3rd century BC onwards to about 7th century AD. So it's a major, about 700 or 800 years of major habitation on this site. And of course, when a site is inhabited for such a long period of time, it develops clusters. It's not, it's not just at one place. So there are lots of sites. So there is a Hellenistic fortress area. There is a Roman Berenike area, and it sort of, spreads around that site. This site has been excavated for the last about 35 years, mainly through the labors of Professor Stephen Sidebottom of the University of Delaware, who is kind of almost called Man Berenike because he's just spent his entire career digging this site up. And it has yielded some really astonishing, what we are saying is astonishing as well, but even before we got here, in the last 20 years or so, this site has yielded some really astonishing material. And one of those, the finds are quite in the discourse about Indo-Roman trade and Eastern Mediterranean and Indian subcontinent trade. They're very, very famous. So, for example, here is a picture that you see these pots which are immersed submerged in the ground. They were sunk in the ground, and they are actually offerings. And within these pots, there was nearly 8 kilos of Indian pepper. So, it's like in your face kind of evidence of the trade that was going on between. Similarly, they found, you see those two workmen digging out an amphora, and some of these amphorae, as famously we know, were found in South Indian sites like Arikamedu and, in India, fragments of these amphorae, even intact pieces of these amphorae were found. Some really interesting ceramic evidence has come forth from Berenike, and some of it we'll see a bit later on. And that potsherd that you see has a graffiti of a ship on it. I mean, how much direct can one get? It's like, it's really very much visual and material kind of evidence. So this site has been in focus for a long time. It's been famous for a long time. And when Stephen was excavating there, the site that we are, like the area that we are going to be looking more carefully, is shown in this excavation map. And this is the site of Roman Berenike, which is kind of dates from 1st century BC to about 3rd, 4th century AD. And here you can see that there are various areas. All maps and pictures I'm showing are courtesy of the Berenike project. They have worked really hard on this, and I'm very privileged and honored that I could use this material to actually bring it to you. There is an area of necropolis. There is a northern complex, and down towards the right, you see that there is an Isis temple. And this is the area which is of great interest to us, because it's whatever we're going to talk about happens in this, it's a happening place. It happens in this area. So when the Isis temple mound was excavated, what we found was this temple, and this is a sanctuary outside the Isis temple. So it's not exactly part of the temple, but is kind of connected to the temple and near about the temple, but it's an independent sanctuary. And you can see that there are few numbers there, which are kind of technical, B22, whatever, so on and so forth. Those are references for trenches that the archaeologists had taken to actually reveal these structures. And as you can see, the sanctuary has a major sort of a central area. And what I was saying is that in this sanctuary, there is this central area. And you can see this is a kind of a plan from bird's eye view of the sanctuary. And on both sides, there are remnants. And in the center also, there are remnants of various dedications. And these are essentially plinths and stelae upon which people left their offerings. So this was what was going on in this sanctuary. People were coming in and people were leaving offerings with a view of, having a good voyage or good trade or, a Thanksgiving or something like that. And the first object that came up is right in the middle of this sanctuary. And here they discovered what was a kind of a collapse. Some of the stuff that was arranged in these votive context had collapsed over each other, and that was it. And in this collapse, we found a really significant object, and that was this stele, which is made with local rock, local stone, which is geologically called anhydritic gypsum. And on this anhydritic gypsum was a bilingual inscription. There is traces of some Greek inscription above and traces of some Greek inscription below. But in the middle, there is obviously Brahmi. And this was sent to me by Steve. And when I read it, it was one of these moments, that you will never forget, and you fall off the chair and that kind of thing. So it was quite remarkable to read this inscription. And what it said was quite stunning. And it was in Sanskrit, and it says, Siddham Radnyo Philippasya Varshe Shashthe, and then That was my reading, Adi, etc., etc. So what was quite clear to me is that this inscription is in Sanskrit, found in Egypt, and mentions for the first time a Roman emperor. And it's a dedication, and the dedication is made by a Kshatriya whose name is Vasula, and it reads quite clearly again. The broken bits are towards the left, and it reads Atra Devase Vasulena Kshatriyena, then broken bits again. But the colophon, the ending of the inscription is very clear, and it says Sarva Sattva Hita Sukhaya. Sarva Sattva Hita Sukhaya is quite certainly a Buddhist colophon. So it is for the benefit of all living beings. This dedication has been made. It is quite interesting that the dedicator is an Indian, obviously, and he identifies himself as a Kshatriya. So his identity is quite certain. So the questions were who is the King Philip, and what does the regnal year 6th that is mentioned in the Siddham Rajnyo Philippasya Varshe Shashte. The pro forma, the language and the wording of this inscription is absolutely Indian. If it was not found in Egypt, anybody would think that this is an Indian inscription. Beginning with Siddham is again very typical of Indian inscriptions of early centuries AD. So then, archaeology is a slow process, and gradually, this was just a JPEG image that I could do my reading on. Later on, we also received RTI images, which are quite crucial. This is a computerized image program which allows you on your computer screen to shed light from different angles and see how the characters change. So it is almost as if you're looking at the inscription in person, as close to it as possible. And then we also involved Professor Ingo Strauch, who is in the University of Lausanne. He is a philologist, a Sanskritist, and an epigraphist. And with him, and with the help of the RTI images, we were able to read this inscription better. And it says we could actually have some idea about what the missing bits were. And he came up with the thought that the missing bits were the mention of the month, which was Ashwayuj or Ashwin, and there was also probably mention of a day. And this formula is very much Indian. The month, the chronology being the chronogram being mentioned as the king's regnal year and the month and the date, and whether it's waxing phase or waning phase of the moon. That's very much an Indian system. So the reconstruction that Ingo forwarded was that it means success Siddham in the 6th year of King Philip, on the 5th day of the bright half of the month of Ashwayuj. On this day, the Kshatriya Vasula had established an image. Now, what that image was, because here we, with the help of RTI images, we could also know what the object of this dedication was, and it was an image. And Ingo thought that this was an image of probably something to do with, there was an M seen in the inscription. So he probably thought that it was something to do with Maitreya or something like that, and he proposed that inscription. There are various caveats, as you can see. The last caveat is that the Maitreyastha Pratima bit is definitely very conjectural. We can't really, and this is something that we were going to do if we had a chance to actually go there and inspect this particular piece in person. Then there were Greek bits on the stele as well, and Professor Rodney Ast from the University of Heidelberg, who's a classical epigraphist, chipped in with his expertise, and we found that at the top there is a Greek word which probably says agada, and it probably stands as a kind of a Greek version of Siddham. It also means good fortune. So it's again kind of same thing being said in Greek. And at the lower end it says Vazulas anetheke in Greek, and anetheke it's like Vazula set it up, and so Vazulas is probably the Greek version of the name Vasula that that happens in the Sanskrit version. So what was this pratima that the inscription refers to that was actually established? And quite within the same pile, but shown to me before this inscription was found, was this piece. And Stephen and I were at a conference in Freiburg in Germany, and Stephen was showing pictures of his recent finds. That was in 2018. And when he showed this, I put my hand up and I said, "This is a Buddha." And there was a ripple in the room because it was not, they said, how? It is very much a figure that would be looking like any donor figure from that part of the world, engraved in. We didn't know what the stone was at that time, so it looked like it was marble-ish, something like marble. And and there was a discussion, and I came back with Stephen on the train. We talked about it, and he said, "Oh, would you like to publish this?" And we would collaborate. That was my personal introduction to the Berenike thing. 4 years later, in 2022, around the same site, as you will see in the next slide, they found this head in 3 fragments, and it fits. I mean, what are the chances that you get a brainwave, you find this, and then you find 4 years later you find the head? So currently, this has become an object which is much talked about, and that is what the entire thing now looks like. And the Egyptian archaeological authorities are in process of setting up a new museum at a place called Al Ismailia, which is near Suez. And this is again precisely showing the same aspects as the project here is showing. It's all about connectivity. And this image is going to be in that museum, and it has now been sort of put together and not consecrated, but displayed in this museum. And if you see the actual pile in which it was found, this is a picture in which this was the collapse as it was discovered, and you can see that the Buddha head is a part of the Buddha head is just here. This is the stele where the Brahmi inscription was. It had fallen on its face, so it had to be sort of lifted up to reveal the inscriptions on the other side. More schematically, this is another version of where things were found and how they were located. And we found better pictures again coming from the team, and this is another illustration of where these things were found. So the stele was up. This is the stele. Part of the Buddha head was found here. Part of the halo behind it was found there. Part of the halo was found there. The torso was found here. So I am pretty much certain. Now this is where the contributing team, we have our differences of opinion. And I pretty much I feel certain that the dedication on the stele refers to this image. It is not Maitreya, but that Maitreya option is kind of conjectural anyway. It is a Buddhist image, obviously, and Pratima that is being referred to in the inscription does refer to a cult image, and this is a cult image, so it probably is the same image. And I was glad to note in the same conference, while things were being shown, that towards the north of the Isis Mound, where there is another site, and there was one more figurine found in the same site, and it also had very close resemblance with this figure. And this is a much smaller figure. You can see the size is much smaller, but of course it has the same features. It has the monk's robes, or sanghati as they are called, and the undergarment which is seen through this frill underneath. it shares these features with the other image. And um, as you saw, the other image has its right side is completely broken. But here we do have a bit of the right side quite visible up there. And here are the similarities. So this is the way the Buddha holds his monk's robes in his left hand, and on the right hand is broken, but the way it has been anatomically shown, most likely it is making a gesture of reassurance. It is doing an Abhaya Mudra, and this particular feature, this particular side in the larger image is completely broken. And also this kind of the lower, the undergarment frill that you see on both the sides. So quite certainly the smaller image is also of a Buddha, although we don't find the head. So the side, what does this tell? And this sort of the story is continuing. So don't go anywhere as yet. It's the inscription is highly significant because it's the first votive dedication in Sanskrit found in the Egypt or Red Sea region. The quality of the Sanskrit language itself is quite good because it has this feature, the epigraphical feature of doubling of some consonants, particularly the consonants that come after a hard consonant. So when they say sarva sattva, the word sattva is, the ta is doubled, and it's in Sanskrit epigraphy, this is called dvittikaran, or dvitta root of the, is sarva sattva, it is double and or inscribed as a double consonant. It's quite certainly Buddhist in nature, as indicated by the Buddhist colophon formula for the benefit and pleasure of all life. The formula is noted in many other Buddhist inscriptions, in many other iterations as well. It means the same thing, but the words are not exactly the same. What is quite interesting is that this inscription is dated in the reign of a Roman emperor, and the donation is made by a person who was a Kshatriya quite clearly. The King Philip, who's mentioned in the Roman emperor, who's mentioned in the inscription, is could be identified with king who's called Philip the Arab, because he was of an Arab ethnic extraction and became an emperor in 242 AD. And with the calculation that we saw in the chronogram that is given in the thing, we know that this was made in it was actually September 248 is the date that we get for this inscription. So it's absolutely clear that this inscription was written in the middle of 3rd century. The closest parallel in terms of paleography for this inscription is an inscription from Gujarat, and it's a Western Kshatrap inscription found in a place called Mevasa, which is near Rajkot. And this tradition of endowments recorded with a Buddhist colophon is quite common in many Western Kshatrap inscriptions in that are found in Gujarat. And how does this contextualize in other inscriptional finds? So there are other inscriptions, epigraphical finds from this region. This is not the only one, but there have been in the past as well. But they're smaller. They're much minor. And there is an ostracon, a piece of pottery that has some Brahmi writing, and it mentions a man called Vishnu Datta. And what follows is perhaps a kind of a list of trade goods. It mentions so many ounces of wine, so many amount of oil and things like that. So it must be a trade good thing. Then there is a Greek inscription at a temple of Seti at Wadi Mia, which is again in the same region, which mentions Sophon the Indian. And even in late 19th century, when this area was being excavated earlier on by people like Flinders Petrie, who was the father of Egyptian archaeology, there's a talk about a votive altar piece which has supposedly Buddhist symbols, and I have not been able to actually track this piece down. But there is correspondence between Flinders Petrie and Vincent Smith in late 19th century that talk about such a piece. And all this has been very masterfully discussed by Professor Richard Solomon of the University of Washington State University in Seattle, in this lovely article called Epigraphic Remains of Indian Traders in Egypt, which appeared in the Journal of the American Oriental Society. And Apart from that, of course, there are many Tamil Brahmi inscriptions which are found on ceramic shards that are excavated in various parts of the wider Mediterranean world, such as Berenike itself, Qasr al-Qadim, which is the ancient port city of Myos Hormuz, and Sumhurim, which is in south of Oman on the Arabian Peninsula. And also there is graffiti in the cave at Hock, which is situated on the island of Socotra, which I will show you in a minute. And there again, there are direct inscriptions in Brahmi. Here are some examples. That is the ostracon of Vishnu Datta that was published by Richard Solomon. And there are these examples of these potsherds which carry Tamil Brahmi inscriptions. This one particularly is not, probably not an inscription. It's a pseudo inscription. But the rest are definitely, and they have been published in many of these publications. The island of Socotra, as you can see, is this little island in the middle of Arabian Sea, and the tradition of connections with Socotra are still around in Gujarat. And this is a temple of Sokotri Mata, which is a cult that is followed in Gujarat, and near Surat, and also on the Kathiawar Peninsula. On the island itself, there is this cave which is on the north of this island, and it's a very long cave. It's a grotto, and it's about 2 kilometers long. And people who have stopped on this island because it was a freshwater source have left dedications there. And it actually encapsulates the Mediterranean world of Mediterranean seafaring so well, because there are inscriptions in all sorts of languages. There are inscriptions in Brahmi and scripts. There are inscriptions in Sanskrit, Bactrian, Sabian, Aksumite, Ethiopian. All sorts of inscriptions are there, and you can say. And this work has been mainly published by Ingo Strauch from the University of Lausanne in a fantastic book about these inscriptions. And what we see from the context of our objects, that there are inscriptions from Gujarat on this site as well. And these are basically graffitis which are engraved and etched on stalagmites and stalactites which are inside the cave, and they have been sort of left to as dedications. The one on the right mentions a person called Jayasena Putra Sanghadas, and it says that he was the resident of a place called Hastakavapra. The place, the site of Hastakavapra is currently known as Hathab, and it is on the Kathiawar side of the Gulf of Cambay coast. And in the geography of Ptolemy, it finds mention by the name of Astakapra. So Hastakavapra was the site in Gujarat. Similarly, there are inscriptions from the residents of Bharukacha, which is Bharuch of today. And we can say Bharukachaka, Niryamaka, Vishnu Dharo. This is the kind of I was here kind of inscription. And there are again inscriptions which also say that these people have actually arrived. So Bharukacha Sheshasya Vishnushena Prapto. So Prapto is that he's come here, he's found himself here. And so that's the thing. So the connections for the site at Berenike and the period in which we are looking at, 248, 249 AD, during the reign of Philip the Arab, and all these inscriptional things sort of come together in a good way. Now, this is again one of the bones of contention within our team, because there are classical art historians who want to, or who have suggested, that the roots and the influences of the Buddha are actually Gandharan. But again, these debates will continue. I think that it's more likely that the Buddha, first of all, the inscription refers to, the object referred to in the inscription is the Buddha, and the connections are much more likely to be Deccan, Gujarat, Socotra, Berenike. So it's this particular sea route that we're talking about. Lastly, there is one more object which was found, which personally I think is more exciting. And it is actually an older object. It's not 248 AD. And it is this Indic stele with the representation of the Indic gods and goddesses. This is again absolutely amazing, locally manufactured. The model is local. Possibly this empty space here was again left for either inscribing or painting an inscription of dedication, much like the other inscription was, but that inscription has been lost. And on top, we have the three figures, a person standing holding a wheel and a club, a person standing holding a plow and a club, and a female figure standing in between. And it's quite interesting that this was found in this little room. And in the room, there were other bits and pieces. And it looked like as if, I told you about the central sanctuary. And it looked like at some point, the central sanctuary was full. Somebody went in the central sanctuary, collected everything and dumped it in that room. So it was, this particular stele was found in this dump, really, in this collection that was kept in this room. This is how it was originally discovered. And closer up, we can see that these are the figurines, and they are very famous representations of Vasudeva, Balarama, and the central female figurine has been central female figure has been identified as that of Ekanamsha, which is a kind of a female principle that then subsequently, when Vaishnavism develops, then it sort of gets absorbed into being Subhadra. But it is at this time she is Ekanamsha. The closest parallels for these depictions are, of course, coins, and you see them on punchmark coins about they are about 150 BC, and they are found from Mathura region. The Mathura region was very much the center of one of the major centers of this cult of the Vrishni triads, as they are called. It's a Vrishni triad. Both Vasudeva and Balarama are Vrishni heroes and Pancharatra heroes, and Ekanamsha is kind of added to that those two heroes in this region. And you can see that these coins, they are represented exactly in the same manner as you see them on the stele that was found. So it's a single figure holding a plow and a club. Here you have two figures. One of them is holding a plow, and the other one is holding a little wheel, precisely in the same format as you see on the stele. Of course, the representations of these heroes, Vasudeva and Balarama, are very much well known from the Gandharan region as well. These are coins of the Indo-Greeks, which are probably the earliest dated representations of these gods and goddesses. That is a coin from of the king Agathocles, which is roughly dated to about 185 BC. And these are important because they are probably the earliest datable representations of Indian gods and goddesses. All this subject has been very deeply researched, and this is a kind of a slide to tell you how the representations of the Vrishnis and the triads have been represented, has been discussed in literature. Great scholars, Doris Metz Srinivasan, but most importantly, even in the 1960s, the absolute fabulous Indian iconographist Nilkant Purushottam Joshi had written extensively in Hindi about these figurines. Great work, and this is the kind of this is where we sort of go back to know more about these cults. And of course, this is not much like these objects that are moving. The movement of coins as well can be a marker for mapping these transoceanic networks in the first to third centuries BC. And by now we have a lot of coin finds which are documented, coins of Indian origin found elsewhere out of India. So we have uninscribed die-struck coins from Gujarat, which are found in Inkitat, which is a site in Oman, and also Maliha and Eddur, which are sites currently in the United Arab Emirates. There are Western Kshatrapa coins in Maliha as well. There is one Western Kshatrapa coin of a king called Bhumaka, found in Sumharam. There are Satavahana coins found in Berenike. There are Western Kshatrap coins found in Berenike. I have recently published a Chera coin that was found in Abu Quraya in Egypt. And there are many, like the other side of the story is true as well. There are many coins found from that part of the world in India. So we have finds of Aksumite coins from Ethiopia in Mangalore. There is a hoard of Himyarite coins from South Arabian Peninsula found in south of Gujarat. And of course, the most important and most famous story is Roman coins, which are found absolutely everywhere in peninsular India particularly. And that has been, again, a subject of great interest. Just as a matter of interest, these are the two coins found in Berenike. The one on the left is a Satavahana coin with an elephant and an Ujjain symbol on the reverse. This is a Western Kshatrap coin. This was found quite earlier on. This was found in about 2012 or something. The Satavahana coin was found in 2015. And again, this tells you, how slow the science of archaeology is, because when that coin was found, we thought it was a stray find. But in 2022, they found another coin of exactly the same type, not very far from it. So now it has been termed as a deposit. And it changes its archaeological context completely. And it's like, it's this kind of wonderful thing. The coin with an elephant is the Chera coin found in Abu Quraya in Egypt. And this is again very significant because in India, in Tamil Nadu, these coins are mainly found by metal scavengers in riverbeds. And there is no archaeological data around these coins very much. But in Abu Quraya, this was found in a proper archaeological dig. And we know, and because their chronology, the archaeological chronology that they have developed at the site is quite fine, we know that this could be dated to about 120 to 140 AD. And that is the first chronological marker that we have for these coins. And this is important because these coins do not have an inscription. So we don't have any other ways to know when they were struck. They are coins from early Tamil Nadu, sort of, Western Tamil country. So, to conclude, what have we seen? Of course, there's manifold importance of these finds. First of all, the archaeological context is very clear and established. So we know what we're talking about in an archaeological sense. These objects are of local manufacture. This is again something very significant. It is not a Roman Poseidon found in India or an Indian ivory found in Pompeii. This is something that is the production of these and the consumption of these objects is going on locally. That is quite a significant thing. And of course, there is an epigraphic significance, talking about, first ever Roman emperor found in Egypt, etc., etc. That sort of story is always there. But widely contextualizing this within an Indian Ocean and maritime networks theme, these objects are absolutely stellar in that balance. And what it tells us, quite interestingly, when the focus has been on objects that sailed away. But here we are looking at people that sailed away. And that is what makes it more human. The fact that these dedications are made in Egypt by a person who really honestly retains his Indian identity, calls himself a Kshatriya. It is inscribed locally in Brahmi, inscribed on local stone, manufactured locally, means that people were present in Berenike who had these skills, who knew Sanskrit, who actually could write Brahmi and, to produce these objects for a local consumption. So that is quite a significant aspect. And therefore, it is more about transculturation. And this is again a major theme that is being discussed in archaeology worldwide, about how local artisanal exchanges appreciate these cross-cultural demands and actually produce these goods. And they also understand their aspirations, what these people want. They want to actually dedicate this piece. So the functionality of these objects is understood by these people. And that's again quite interesting because it's happening thousands of kilometers away from India. So to actually have that presence in this cluster is absolutely of great significance. And we talk about, globalization as a kind of, modern phenomenon. This is an example of an ancient phase of globalization, but it is also an expression of local focuses that were existing, local clusters of people that were there. So in a way, it gives us a sound of these localized voices. It's not just global, but also local, and localized voices from the past. And I always show this lovely slide. This is a medallion in the Chennai Museum from Nagarjunakonda. A king, which is presumably a Satavahana king, is being brought all these trade goods towards his feet by sailors, which are obviously from of the world that we've just been talking about. They wear tunics, they have frizzy hair, so they are definitely from the Red Sea coast. So this would be a good sort of, and it makes a very interesting juxtaposition to all the colonial imagery that we see in the 18th and 19th century, when you have Britannia and Victoria and all these people who receive trade goods from Indians. And as against that, this is exactly the opposite of it. This is people from the Mediterranean world bringing trade goods to the benefits and the riches of an Indian ruler. Lastly, I must acknowledge my contributors and collaborators in this project. All this is being submitted in a manuscript, and we are publishing it in the American Journal of Archaeology, and it will be available for wider scholarly distribution quite soon. But these are the people who have played a real important role, and this also tells you that building these global stories is a labor of patience as well as collaboration. Like you can't build these stories unless you actually link up with these people. And this again would be a fitting tribute to what the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Museum is trying to achieve. Is basically precisely the same. That we are looking at the position of ancient India in this global world of the global ancient world in general. Thank you very much.